Today's topic is cardiac cycle, which is a sequence of events in one heartbeat. Let's talk about objectives of this video. So we are learning about what is cardiac cycle, what are number of phases during one heartbeat, and we'll see how valves work and also how heart sound is made. So good to go. It is important that chambers of heart all contract in a coordinated fashion. If the chambers contract out of sequence, this will lead to inefficient pumping. The sequence of events involved in one heartbeat is called cardiac cycle. As a series of events is a cycle, it has no clear beginning or end. To make it easier, we can describe the cycle in a number of phases. So we call filling phase when both atria and ventricles they are relaxing. When they relax, their internal volume increases and blood flows into the heart through the major veins. Blood flows into the atria and then through these open atrioventricular valves it goes down into the ventricles. So this phase of the cycle is known as diastole. So this is actually relaxing phase where heart is filled with blood. Now we'll talk about contraction of heart chambers. First we'll see atrial contraction. The heartbeat starts when atria contract. Both right and left atria contract together. The small increase in pressure created by this contraction helps to push blood into the ventricles. This stretches the walls of the ventricles and ensures they are full of blood. Contraction of atria is called atrial systole. Once the ventricles are full, they begin to contract. Blood fills the atrioventricular valve flaps, causing them to snap shut. Once blood starts going upward, this blood fills the pockets of these valves and then they get closed. This prevents blood returning back into the atria. We talk about ventricular contraction. The walls of ventricles contract. This is called ventricular systole. This raises pressure in the ventricles very quickly. The contraction starts at the base of heart, so this pushes the blood upward towards the arteries. The semilunar valves, these are the semilunar valves. They open and blood is pushed out of the heart. The contraction only lasts for a short time. Then ventricle walls, they relax that allow heart to start filling again. Now we'll see how valves work. The valves ensure that blood flows in the correct direction. They are opened and closed by changes in the blood pressure in the various chambers of heart. First of all, we'll see how AV valves work. AV means atrioventricular valves. When the ventricular walls relax, like they recoil or they go back to their normal size, normal shape, after contracting, the pressure in the ventricles drops below the pressure in the atria. So at this point, the pressure in the atria is higher than the pressure in the ventricles. What happens? This causes AV valves to open. Blood entering the heart flows straight through the atria and into the ventricles. The pressure in the atria and ventricles slowly rises as they fill with blood. The valves, they remain open while atria are contracting. As the ventricles begin to contract, the pressure of the blood in the ventricles rises. When the pressure rises above that in the atria, what happens? The blood starts to move upward. Now pressure in the ventricles is higher than the pressure in the atria. Because of this, blood moves upward. This movement fills the valve pockets and keeps them closed. This prevents the blood flowing back into the atria. So when the pressure is higher in the ventricles, this pressure of the blood, it fills the pockets of these valves and then they are closed, so blood cannot go back into the atria. If we talk about semilunar valves, when ventricles start to contract, when they just start to contract, at this point the pressure in the major arteries here is higher than the pressure in the ventricles. So this means that the semilunar valves at this point, they are closed because of the higher pressure in these arteries and the lower pressure in the ventricles. As the ventricles they contract, the pressure inside the ventricle rises above the pressure in the aorta and the pulmonary arteries. The semilunar valves are pushed open. The blood is under very high pressure, so it is forced out of the ventricles in a powerful way. Once the ventricle walls have finished contracting, the heart muscles start to relax. Elastic tissue in the walls of the ventricles, they recoils and the ventricles go back into their normal size, original size. This causes the pressure in the ventricles to drop quickly. As it drops below the pressure in the major arteries, the semilunar valves, these are pushed closed by blood starting to flow back toward the arteries. Now, when the low pressure is here, the blood that is going upward into the arteries, it starts to come back. And when it is coming back, it fills the pockets and it causes these valves to close. Because of this, blood cannot come back into the ventricles. The familiar lifted sound made by the heart is actually made by the valves closing. The first sound, that is lub, is made by atrioventricular valves closing as the ventricles start to contract. The second sound, that is dub, is made by the semilunar valves closing as the ventricles start to relax. The atrioventricular valves snap shut. They are closed like this. They are snap shut. So this noise is louder than the closing of the semilunar valves, which shut because blood is accumulating in their pockets.